Hey everyone,
Hello, hello. Hopefully this is working.
it's Friday rant time.
It is Friday run time, and we're doing something different. We're actually at a brewery,
We
and we're
are.
using the Wi-Fi of the brewery. We brought in our mic.
hmm
Got a beer. How you doing?
Cheers.
Cheers. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, everyone.
We're at my favorite brewery in Austin, which is my local brewery called Lazarus.
Lazarus Brewing.
It's just a 10-minute walk from my house.
Juan loves this brewery.
It is. I
He
got
has, he has a VIP membership.
here's a special cup.
Your chalice.
My chalice. But yeah, here we are. What's on your mind, Tim?
Well, last weekend here in Austin, Texas, was Day-to-Day Texas.
That was Day-to-Day Texas.
And,
Before we go there, reminder, we're actually going to be in New York
Mm-hmm.
the week of February 9th. We got there, we're meeting customers and stuff. So for anybody, New York listeners, if you're around, let us know. We'd love to kind of hang out.
Yeah.
Our week is a bit flexible, so maybe cool to organize some impromptu dinners or hang out, coffee, drinks, whatever. So anyways, let us know.
Give a shout.
Give a shout out.
New York City, here we come.
So, but then, all right, back to Day-to-Day Texas. That was the big highlight. I think that was.
And a lot of people flew in and braved the frigid weather. It was like 35 degrees Fahrenheit and raining just before the conference, and so
it got freezing. Like
we got a little ice
I
everywhere.
have to say, it was kind of annoying that like everybody's talking about the freaking weather. I'm like, let's talk about fucking data, not with the weather. I was like, enough. All right, come on. But yeah, that was a
Everybody wants to talk about the weather.
Yeah.
But some people couldn't make it because they had things on Monday. They couldn't risk it. But a lot of people did show up, and it was a lot of fun. It was good.
And then what was really cool and such a freaking amazing honor is to know that I met several people who went to the conference just because they heard about it. They listened to the podcast.
Yeah.
They heard us talk about it on the podcast, and they went. So that is super cool. So
that is really cool.
Yeah,
that's
a really sign of community. Like I really love that. So we feel honored that we can be part of that. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, and unfortunately, this was the final edition, right?
The final edition.
Lynn Bender, who has been sort of a maven of the data and AI and analytics community here in Austin, has been putting on Day-to-Day Texas for a while now, and it's always been a really fun event where I feel like a lot of honest, no BS conversations happen about graph, around data, around semantics.
And the cool thing about it is that it's always it's all practitioners, not really it's not vendor.
Yeah.
And then also what I really appreciate is that the people who are presenting there, it's again, it's not blah blah blah. And I personally always, because I give the talks out there a lot, it's always my first talk. So it's early on. It's a new message, and it's not all polished, but it's like you get the brand new stuff out there. So
it's a safe place to be unsafe with your message.
So I'm curious. I know something's gonna happen. I expect something to happen. I don't know exactly what's gonna happen, but what's important is that the data community is really strong. And again, just seeing people coming from all over the place, all over the world, from Australia to London to Norway, like people literally came from all over the world just for the weekend. So that's a sign of how strong the data community is. It's really cool.
What were some of your biggest takeaways coming out of Day-to-Day
So
Texas?
the biggest takeaway for me is the social one, the people one. It's like people are afraid. It was like you start out like the opening keynote from Patrick McFadden about like, here's what we should be thinking about, right? And it was like, but acknowledge that there's change happening, but also what's important is that data people, data engineers, and all, like they have all the elements to really take the storm and kind of go head first, because their ability to change, their ability to adapt to change, right? Their ethics. There's a lot of stuff that we can go use and use that to our advantage. So that's when you could see this. And I missed your hearts. By the way, this is another issue of Data Texas. Like, you want to clone yourself. Like, I wanted to be at 3 talks. I didn't even want to be on my talk, but I wanted to see Lena's talk, for example. Like, so
too much good stuff.
So Shahar gave another talk around that stuff, right, about the $1 million data professional, and then the town hall with Joe and Mike, Joe and Matt. It started with one question, which was, how do we see ourselves in 3 years? And that was the only question we discussed for an hour and a half, almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
And so you can see like a whole spectrum of people being afraid, a spectrum of people being optimists, but the optimism was also like we're optimists because we have a path. we got to go work.
Right.
You could do that. But there's everything. There's so much to consider.
Well, and whether you're anxious or you're excited, change is for sure happening to our profession around data and will continue to happen, probably at an accelerated pace as we go forward.
Exactly.
So buckle up, and yeah, Patrick McFadden had a good talk.
That was one of the big takeaways for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then my favorite talk, and it's the talk that I wish every data, like this honestly should have been the keynote, another keynote for everybody, was the librarian talk by Jenna Jordan. Unfortunately, Amalia couldn't come. Amalia has been on the podcast. That's also one of my favorite podcast episodes.
Child.
Because look, it's one of those things that you're like, it's once you listen to it, it's obvious, but it's not obvious because we're not exposed to this. Like Jenna gave this entire talk about how librarians do reference interviews. It just went through that one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that librarians do, but she just went through the reference interview, and it's like, it's an aha moment saying that's exactly kind of like data people are already kind of doing it, and there's like now a formal structure how to go do that, and like that's something that everybody should be doing. And then part of it is that it was a very bold talk in the sense that it found truths, not very ordinary, obvious things. And one of those things is as a librarian, like it's your goal to make sure that the person who's coming to you asking for something, you're helping them. You understand their needs. Mm-hmm. If there wasn't success, it wasn't their fault. It was your fault, which goes back into like, it's not just about data literacy. It's more of this business literacy, understanding your user.
Just to comment on that really quick, because that was one of the, we tried as much as we could to divide and conquer, but that was one talk we both went to. One thing that was very interesting to me is when she walked through the steps of doing a reference interview. And it was very focused on like, don't judge, slow down, make sure you really understand. And what's cool to me is that like I saw kind of two applications. One is as data professionals, as we're seeking to understand the business and seeking to understand how we can make an impact, right? But then secondly, when you think about AI, and I know I'm using AI a lot in my daily life now, and it's very focused on, usually AI responds very quickly. Mm-hmm. It's very confident, right? But like I'm excited for in our agentic future to really get better at AI that's curious and just wants to ask lots of questions to really understand what I'm talking about.
And actually, I brought this up with Jen on the hallway conversations, which again, one of the coolest thing about the conference is like, all these hallway conversations is what will we have in agents, like these agents for reference librarians, right? Will they actually, the whole, because you actually have a very fixed kind of pattern what to go do. And I think that's a valuable thing because we can actually scale this out. But the question is, how do we go do this and stuff? And she is excited. She's testing this out with other folks. I'm really curious. I think this is something that we should really, the data community itself should be able to go look into. But first, we need to go understand that entire area. So shout out to all the librarians. I'm writing up my blog posts about everything here, and I think I just took slides of all those pictures I took pictures of all those slides I'll be posting, and then Jenna and Amalia will be back on the podcast. We'll go through some in detail. So looking forward to that.
Excited for that.
So what else? What else did takeaways do you have from the conference?
So one talk I saw that was very interesting was Sanjeev Mohan.
I missed that one. Yes,
that was okay. We divided and conquered on that one. Sanjeev is always great, by the way, because I think he's, as an independent consultant, he sees the bigger picture, and he's always been very intimately aware and understanding what vendors are doing, what's happening at the macro picture, but also the micro picture, and then understanding the technology. And he called out all the trends that he sees that are going on across different parts of the data and AI industry. And I just want to mention his top takeaways. So number one, probably won't surprise a lot of our listeners, just assuming kind of the people in our listener base here, but he said context beats models. So I think the whole industry is starting to come around to this now, that like LLMs are a very important piece of the picture, but context is going to be the key glue. Mm-hmm. He said everything converges. So, we're in a very much a convergence right now of tools, of process, silos are collapsing, disciplines are collapsing, right? And then thirdly, he said governed outcomes, not inputs. And I thought that was kind of interesting because Right now, a lot of focus is more on the kind of the input side of AI, like RAG and what context are we feeding it. But he said a lot more focus as we go forward over the next couple of years is going to be on the output side, shifting more to continuous monitoring and guardrails around AI and how that's going to spawn a whole new industry.
How much of that is like, I mean, it's not one or the other, it's both, right? So if you do the whole shift left, you're actually trying to go govern things from the input, but then you also need to do somewhat of a shift right is also governing the outputs. And I think, and it's a good point.
A feedback loop.
And then it's a feedback. That's true. Like, I mean, from a systems approach, I think about their inputs and outputs, right? So you should make sure, like, what is the input, and I keep track of that. But also the output is like, what was the output, and somehow was that a good, or testing's outside when the output comes out. So,
and Sanjeev had one hot take. We had a few hot takes, but one hot take that I'll call out, which is that he said he thinks that MCP is going to be kind of overshadowed by skills. Skills being, like you can go into Claude and you can create a skill. And you can go into like OpenAI and you can create like either a GPT or, create like a tool for OpenAI, right? So basically these more like AI platform specific skills are going to be better than MCP because MCP is kind of too broad, too generic. I thought that was interesting because there's an argument that is the opposite. So, you talk about profound versus common truths, right? And this was more of a profound statement.
Well, it goes back to like how much, if you think about it as that box, as an input and output, like how broad do you want it to be? Mm-hmm. Oh, this can do a bunch of things. So you get a bunch of inputs, and depending on the inputs, you have the outputs. Yeah. Or you're turning it to something very specific. Again, it goes back to like how much are you boiling the ocean? You're making it too small.
Well, and also a thing I read from that was like curated integrations with AI are going to be higher quality, perhaps, than just like more free-for-all style integrations, which doesn't necessarily imply one technology or another, but it just implies curation.
But I also think that this is where like you get at some point where you want to have some deterministic workflows, and it's not just like there's actually people defining some sort of the rules for a very specific task, and then what you're really going to have another agent is really figuring out the planning because it has all these things, and then it let that because it's like here are all these tools you go through MCP or here are all these skills or whatever. But at the end of the day, the principle is the same. Is like what is this particular thing that I'm focused on to go solve, and if the moment that is too broad, then there's risk that that things can be confused and so forth. So okay, that's a good point. Finally had a chance to listen to Winfried. Also, he's a great guy. Been on the podcast. The main thing I love from him, I have a picture of one of his slides, is that governance is one. I know we talk a lot about how you have data governance and AI governance, and people's like should be the same. But he's like, oh, you have AI governance, data governance, IT governance, risk governance, corporate governance. Like all of this stuff should be aligned, and we're not aligning these things. And obviously, it's not as easy, but I think there's some kind of overarching kind of principles that you can start off with from a corporate governance perspective, and then the implementation that should be different. Like, it will be different, but I think that's a really important perspective. Is like there is governance all over the place in the organization today, and if you're doing it one way, like you're doing it one way, and somebody else is doing it a different way. Like you're still continuing those silos, and the whole point is like in a way for governance is to help break down silos. So it's kind of a little bit meta that you have the so many different types of governances, but that's why it's important to align those. So that was something I really valued, seeing that perspective.
It was cool to finally meet him in person.
Yeah.
He travels a lot. I feel like on LinkedIn I'm always seeing his airplane photos.
He's also a good, I think, hiker too. So
is he? Yeah.
And then I just saw for like the last 5 minutes of Thais Cook's talk, who will also be an upcoming podcast guest. I have her slide here. It says, "Pipelines move more than data; they move understanding." That's a quote. That's a T-shirt quote right there. So I love that one.
That's cool.
What else is on your mind for takeaways from the conference?
I'll call out two more speakers. So one is Lena. She had a talk where she talked about the context that you're using when you're trying to do agentic coding, right? So she's talking about basically her own experiences and working with lots of customers and partners and just people in general using, Claude and all these different tools now to automate programming. And one of the key things that she walked through was the journey of people learning how to code with an AI agent. And one of the key things that you do along the way is you start creating artifacts. And you have these like specs and these artifact kind of context files that you're storing things, usually marked down, but there's some newer ways that are even more interesting to store information. So that way, when you start to run out of context window, you can go and switch to different. You can have things kind of be carried on almost like memory in the artifact files. But even that is not enough. And so as you go forward, she called out that there's like 4 things that agentic coding needs to focus on. One is you need to really be thoughtful about architectural decisions. And so more and more coders are becoming code architects, software architects. And so she talked about that. She talked about you have to think a lot about edge cases, because AI is really good at the mainline cases, but not good at the edge cases. So you end up focusing a lot more on edge cases. Constraints, actually kind of providing guardrails and policies. And then requirements. You become more of a product manager, and you're thinking about like, what are the requirements that I'm passing in, having really good requirements and acceptance criteria. And so she said those 4 things: architecture decisions, education constraints, and requirements are the focus for engineers.
Because I think this is now elevating the engineering we do. I mean, once upon a time, people had to write assembly code, and then we've had higher level abstractions, and we don't have to go do that anymore. Some people may do that, but not as often, right? And we've constantly gone up higher and higher. Now we have a higher level abstraction, what to do, and then the phenomena of computing. And this is for me an example of why computer science is actually a science. There's a phenomenon here of computing is like that computational thinking occurs in what you just described, right? I'm thinking about the products, right? The architecture of things. There's a more technical level where I'm not going to go implementation. I can go deeper and deeper, and I can compile that to a little bit more, all the way down to bits, right? But at the end of the day, it's still some computational thinking that we're doing, and I think that's really what's so important. And going back to like are we afraid of our jobs going away? I was like, well, if you are just focused on like the bottom layers, a lot of those jobs are going to go away. But what's really, really important is not analytical thinking, but I'm really calling this out computational thinking. And like this is truly the phenomena of computation. And
it's kind of like it's whatever is the next level up.
Next level up. And this is, I think, the other part too is the people skills. And this is something I've been talking, and it goes back to like even what like the librarian talk is like, you got to talk to people and be empathetic. And again, the thing is, these are the strong skills, not the soft skills, the strong skills. So yeah. By the way, just I see some comments here. Yes, we are even doing this live here. It is being recorded. We'll post this on the podcast in an hour or so.
And actually, somebody asked, what beer are you drinking?
Yeah, let's quick pause. Beer. Hey, Dre, I am drinking, this is called the Lift Ticket. It's a pale ale.
Okay.
These are all Lazarus beers. What are you drinking?
So I'm drinking, what's cool about Lazarus is they do these like seasonal type beers. This one's I think it's called Buffalo Kick. And it's a Czech dark lager.
Oh.
I think. Yeah. It's pretty good. Yeah. Almost went for the Imperial Stout. They have that too.
I'm not a stout. I'm like
you want to do a stout?
No, I like a good Guinness, and then
that's fair. It is the afternoon here, so it's like a stout. The stout's a little.
It's
strong.
so cold, so you can see us all.
Yeah.
If you're watching us, you can see us. We still have jackets outside. So
Austin Burr.
So what else? Other takeaways?
So other takeaways. I'll call out one last takeaway, which is that other than the community and how awesome that is, we'll probably comment on that in a second. There was a talk towards the end of the day that was a little bit controversial.
That's one I'm thinking too.
Which is fun.
Paul's a semantic layer.
Paul Blankley from Zenlytics.
Zenlytics, yeah.
And basically the premise of his talk was that we should actually stop spending so much focus on the semantic layer and let the AI do its thing.
Yeah.
Embrace like the coding getting done on the fly.
Yeah.
And that was pretty controversial.
I'm writing up my official response to that stuff. But I
definitely you had some people in the audience who were,
right,
like,
so
are you saying context is not important? And he was like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Yeah.
But let's think about it from a computational think from the principles and the science here of computation. There is some work that needs to occur, right? There's work that you have there. Basically, there's data, and then there is some sort of a question, and I want to be able to go answer, right? So there is, to be able to go answer this question and then use this data, there's also some interpretation that needs to occur. So I think that's something else that happens. Now the question is, how is this combined? So if I take, for example, the question, let's say I have three things. I have the question,
Mhm.
I have the context, and I have the data.
Mhm.
I can take the data and the context and combine that stuff together and tell the question, hey, go do that. I can take the question with the context together and say, go do that first, and then here's the data.
Mhm.
You can do all these combinations. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, some may think some may others, but there is work that needs to be done. And I think his argument is like, well, that work could be done by adding this other thing that can just magically write code, and you give it all these things. And I think my answer is like, just because it can doesn't mean we should to do that. And I think also depends on the use cases, depends on what type of how complete you want to be things and how accurate you want to go do stuff.
Yeah.
And I think also like you test this out, it works nice on very cute examples. But like, I think there's also, it depends on the scale of the enterprise scale that you're looking at.
Yeah. Well, and zooming out a little bit, and I don't know if Paul would agree with this. So if Paul ends up listening or this gets to you, I'm curious about your opinion on this. But like, I didn't get the feeling that Paul was saying like semantics don't matter. I think he was saying that the semantic layers that traditionally have been built into BI tools are not, they're limiting us. That actually AI can do, and LLM specifically can do way more if you take off some of the shackles that these rigid BI-centric semantic layers are placing.
I think I would agree.
And I think that's actually fair.
That's a fair
I agree
point.
with that.
That's a fair point, and I agree.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he meant. And I'm curious if he was gonna. We'll send this to him to see if he can get back to us. But my point is, okay, so we have some semantic layer that can do a translation to a query, and that is constraint. So therefore, if I want to have an agent to do, it depends on that constraint. So in a way, it's like, well, let's take those. Let's even eliminate that constraint and let the LM do everything. And I'm like, well, that's assuming that you are going to live with that constraint. What about you extend that and you improve that? And instead of saying, oh, I can only do this limited expressiveness, like you actually work to make that much more expressive and do more of that. And you do that in a deterministic manner that you can go trust it. Mm-hmm. I think that's in the approach of saying, well, you're just then shifting the work to do the LLM instead of actually shifting the work to improve your semantic layer. By the way, let's go actually have Claude to go create the code and improve these things, which should be done, right? Yeah. So I think that's my point. That at the end of the day, it's like, how much determinism do we want to have versus non-determinism?
Right. Yeah. And I guess it depends a lot on the question that you're asking.
Exactly.
And what data you have available.
100%. And then also, it's like, I think there's also this assumption that I see this over the time, especially happens a lot in the testing, is that people expect that the input is one question I need to go answer immediately. Mm-hmm. Like, no, there's a lot of disambiguation that needs to occur over there. And I think part of that disambiguation or that translation that occurs actually is the human in the loop. And like, that's actually putting the human in accountable. It's like, oh, well, hey, going back to one of your earlier points, like, oh, you should be more curious. And like, this is part of the reference. This is part exactly of the reference librarians. They're like, wait, you asked this question. Wait, what do you mean by that? It could mean this, it could mean that. But you extend it. You're like, oh, so we started chatting 5 minutes ago. And after 5 minutes, what we realized is that you really mean this and this and this and this. Is like, yes, that's what I mean. Okay, now I can go do that. Like, that's the work that we should be able to go figure out. And yes, you can use context for that, but I'm not like answering the question immediately. We're figuring this out together.
100%. By the way, I see Jenna's actually paying attention to us chatting here. By the way, we loved your talk, Jenna. And she said that from Paul Blankley's talk, today's semantic or metric layers need to evolve, or people will move on or pass on.
That's a fair point.
I think that's right. I think that's right. And maybe they're, I don't know how fast they get ripped out of BI tools or not, right? But like, what's interesting, and I don't know how much time we'll have to go into this, the idea.
We have all the time. Nothing.
I guess we have all the. What's funny for those that are listening right now? We said, hey, we'll probably do this for 10 minutes, and we're already at 25 minutes. I guess we love the way that our voices sound. It's the beer. It's the beer. I promise.
That is true. We like to hear ourselves talk. We cannot deny that. There's a reason I've been doing this shit for so long.
We kid. We think. We hope. So where was I going with what I was saying? Oh yeah. So OSI from Snowflake, the spec. So for those not as familiar with OSI, Snowflake and a bunch of other companies are kind of collaborating around open semantic interchange, OSI. They came out with their spec this week, which is great to see that spec.
And just quick, I took a quick look. It's super simple. It's great. Yeah, it's great. Fantastic.
Yeah, kind of looks a little like LookML. Looks a little like DBT semantic layer. It's just, but a little bit genericized and interoperable, right? It has like dialect and things like that kind of in there, right? Cool. And I guess my point for bringing that up is, I think we're going to see semantics, broadly speaking, for companies. Let's just keep this in enterprise data management for a second. For companies, need to be managed, but then you want to have it be integrated with the actual execution.
Yeah.
And I think you've got actually some good posts that you've made on this around sort of like, metadata that's deployed metadata versus what do you call like metadata that's being
just governed?
managed?
It's just governed. So government.
Yeah.
And I think
the governance of metadata.
So here's one point. So, hi VJ, it's been a long time. Great, thanks to see you over here. So this is a good point. Like, it's a false choice. A semantic layer is just one piece of the context. Maybe he's saying we are too hung up on semantic layers as we frame them today. And I think that's exactly the point. And by the way, people commonly use the term semantic layers, really something specific for BI, these BI semantic layers. And I think that's that's what people are realizing is like all this semantics is context, especially for AI. It's much more than BI semantic layers. Like that is such a small view of the world. And I think that's why eventually it's just going to be one little feature of semantics. You use that for it, right? So I think that's kind of when we see ontologies coming around now. People are realizing like, oh, I want to go model my entire domain model, which is not just facts and dimensions. I want to be able to then add more constraints and axioms and rules and all that stuff, right? Contracts and stuff around all my business domain.
Yeah.
And that is much more than what we're just talking about BI semantics. And actually, one of the things, like in hallway conversations, there's a lot of data practitioners, and actually there are a handful of actually executives in the room. There are people coming in there quietly, and I got to meet up with a couple of them, and independently, the thread that came up was people really thinking about like this enterprise brain. Like this is something we've been talking about a lot, right? Like we gave a talk at Big Data London a while ago where we say like the enterprise brain is really you're sensing things, right? You're reasoning around that, then you're acting on what you decided, and that had that feedback loop, and then all of that is governed
with the business,
and all of that is governed.
Govern it, yeah,
right. And that's exactly what they want, especially because all of these companies are just so siloed that they want to know like there's some work that happens in one place that will affect something else somewhere else in the business, and we don't even know how they're connected and how it's going to get affected. But those are the things that we want to start tracking, and like in that being understanding what these different concepts are and what departments they are and how they start to kind of transcend different boundaries within the silos. Like that is what organizations want, and that's semantics right there, which is again way more than just BI fact and dimension tables. So I think people are starting to go realize this, and all the companies that I've been talking to, they're like, when they're excited about semantics, they're really excited about like, I want to be able to bring and manage and govern all of this knowledge about my business.
Yeah, agreed. And everything seems to be converging on this fact that as data professionals, we're starting to be less people that have to manage data, kind of pipelines and databases as we've always known them. And we're moving to become more and more knowledge managers and caretakers of the enterprise brain.
Yep. I think that's what we're going to be heading towards. So then, I think one more thing he says, yeah, spot on. Business context may be more crucial than data schema context of Power SQL.
Yeah.
100%. That's just a use of it. Then on Sunday, there was all these discussions, which was really cool. I missed out because it was frozen. I couldn't get out of my house, but I missed an AMA with Bill Inman. That was probably very epic. Said I missed it, but luckily I've had good chances to chat with Bill, which he's also been on the podcast, so it's a good episode to listen to.
Bill's cool.
I was part of a good discussion with led by JGP talking about what is AI ready data.
Any big takeaways from that? Other than chaos, or what does it mean to be AI ready?
Let's just keep it as that. There's two more to be done.
Maybe there's another follow-up conversation.
We'll do that. Imagine that I don't have it right now on the tip of my tongue, so it means that it wasn't that memorable. Like, sorry, JGP. Just being very honest and no BS.
You know, it's funny in my to-do list. One of my things that I want to write a post on is AI ready data. Like, what is that? Like, what does that even mean, right? And so, gives me more motivation.
But then what I really enjoyed, there's a whole. So Carl Evo actually had a conversation about like the finances and data, which was really interesting. You could see a lot of people opening up, still concerned on like, am I providing ROI on my data? And somebody actually said, "Oh, this has been a great therapy session for me because I realized that people are in the same kind of boat. So I think that's still a constant thing, which is kind of sad and surprising, but it's something people need to overcome, and that's all just executive leadership around that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I gave it also kind of like an ask me anything about knowledge graphs, and I think I was at the end of the day, so we closed at the bar, and I think bottom line, people really the talk that I gave with all the 20 lessons that I get, it really resonated, and people wanted to dig in more. So that's why I'm like right now posting every day one of those lessons. So I think today I posted lesson 4.
Yeah, what's funny is like I saw your like post number 4 today, and like I had this immediate feeling of like it's kind of like an advent calendar. Like it's like you open the little door and you're like KG Insight number 4.
All right, I wonder what's gonna happen at the end of it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, what else is on your mind?
What else is on the mind? I'm trying to think.
There's something you brought up earlier. You mentioned
it's about
MCP.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things about MCP that I'm hearing more and more in conversations is that, well, first of all, MCP is still a very dominant part of the conversation when it comes to like AI agents interacting with systems of some kind, right? Whether it's APIs or other types of capabilities. But I keep on hearing a consistent thread of people saying that that if you hook up too many MCP tools to AI agents, that they get confused very easily. And I keep on hearing this over and over and over again. That worries me a little bit, right? That like because I think there was a moment, this is happening over and over, I feel like, in the AI industry right now. It's like we feel like we hit some kind of like a milestone, and we're like, MCP. We're like, oh my God, MCP is the answer, right? And then you hook up an AI agent to 20 MCP capabilities, and all of a sudden it's confused again. It's hallucinating again. And we're like, wait, what? I thought we solved it, right? I don't have like a conclusion on this because I think that we're still working through this as an industry. But I'm curious. This is a little bit of a call for thoughts from the community. Like, what are you seeing with MCP architectures? Are you seeing people finding a way to successfully scale AI agents that have access to, multiple or many MCP servers and tools?
And then bring in the whole A2A thing.
Yeah, well, A2A, I still have...
Well, actually, I'm
not meeting enough companies that are doing interesting things with A2A. But if some folks know some good examples there, it seems like it's all MCP.
That is true. But I am going to, like, right in here, a shout out to our colleague, Suganda, who actually wrote a really simple post about, like, MCP and A2A.
Yes. Suganta. By the way, shout out to Sugant. He has been at ServiceNow for a long time, and he's very involved with MCP and some of the other agentic protocol committees, and he had a good write-up on LinkedIn.
Posted it right
MCP
here.
Versus A2A. So check that out if you're not as familiar with those concepts. Any final thoughts?
Let's see. It was just so freaking amazing to go hang out with so many people. That was so cool. It was. Yeah, that was
cool people.
Cool people hanging out. Unfortunately, we couldn't go out to a lot of places because it was cold. There's so much ice that we wanted to go to some places, and they were like, no, they're not. They didn't even open up, right? So
yeah, a lot of places closed, but kind of made it like a special data summer camp.
Yeah,
winter camp.
Winter camp. Well, all right. Well, we'll be in New York, so whoever is going to be around New York, let us know, and then next event's probably, I think, is going to be Gartner in Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be there. We're also being Gartner in London, which will be in May.
The Knowledge Conference of ServiceNow.
The Knowledge Conference of ServiceNow is in May too. A lot of events going forward. So, cheers. I think I need another beer.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right. Cheers,
everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for
Happy Friday.
joining us and listening. Bye.